actually an NBA player, told me this early on when I was starting. And he was like, don't really view anyone as competition. He's like, you don't want to give everyone away all your info and just tell them how you're doing everything. But there's a ton of room for everyone. And you actually all, if you're operating well and you're good people and doing good stuff, there's enough pie for everyone. And so for us, it's just always been, how can we collaborate with someone versus, oh, we got to compete with them or they might take away this. But especially in sports, I mean, it's all based around teams anyway. So that's been the other key of learning that early, of looking at things and not going, oh, there's something similar they're doing, we got to compete with them. But hey, they're doing this really good here, we're doing this really good here. How can we make something mutually beneficial happen? So
and welcome to another episode of the SportsTech All-Stars podcast. We are right on the throes of our next SportsTech VC report. It's been a few late nights writing that thing, but it's fun. There's a lot of interesting stuff that we're going to be covering. A shifting sports tech market, we're going to call it. We're going to actually, I've coined it as the year of consolidation, where funding numbers were basically at an all-time low, I want to say. It's certainly since the period that we've been recording data, but M&A activity was at an all-time high. Make of that what you will. Actually, we make of that quite a bit, and which is why the year of consolidation moniker. And to talk more about it, all this month, I've had a bunch of investors on the show. Today, I've got somebody who wears a couple of hats. So also as a fund and investor, and we'll get to that. But first, similar to us, they like to talk, or he likes to talk about what's happening in sports media, entertainment, and tech, of course. I've got on the show Andrew Petcash, the founder of Profluence. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Ron, appreciate you having me, and look forward to that report as well. You guys do great work, so it's nice. We've had a bunch of conversations, on the back end, but to now put it public and share some insights for everyone. So I hope this is helpful, and thanks for having me on.
No worries at all. And I actually saw, I think when we first got introduced, I suddenly saw Profluence drop on my radar of somebody else who's talking about what's happening in sports tech, which is something that I very much welcome. I feel like we've been doing this, certainly in pockets. I guess in the US, there are different people who do it in different ways. We've been doing this in Europe for a while. And I think you've been doing this now for a little over a year, I want to say.
From the Profluence side, yeah. We can get into my background, but it's really like an 8-year journey of creating content and building digital media type stuff. But yeah,
let's get into that. Let's start right there, and then we get to Profluence. So why don't you give our listeners, our viewers, a little introduction about your background, what took you to Profluence, and what exactly is Profluence? Because again, I think similar to us, you do a couple of different things. You do some media, you do some investing. So your journey, and then take us into Profluence.
Yeah, for sure. So Andrew Petcash, and really sports has been my whole life to some degree. So it's now interesting to take it from just playing the sport and being involved in that lens. I actually coached for a little right out of college, and then now really on the business side. So I've seen it in different
you also
fronts.
Played a little. We covered that before.
Yeah. So played basketball at Boston University. In college,
I don't want Andrew. Sorry, not to interrupt. But I don't want Andrew to sell himself short, pun intended. Andrew's a tall boy who's played a bit of basketball in his life. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm 6'3", which you can't hear through your microphone, and also you can't really see through the video. But was blessed with a little bit of height and had the awesome opportunity to play on a full scholarship at Boston University, get a great education, and meet a ton of great people. And we were good too. We had really good teams. A bunch of my teammates now playing at high levels in Europe. A few actually in those two-way spots in the NBA. So sort of G League, but sometimes get bumped up to the NBA. And we made the tournament one year, which was awesome. But in college, I sort of just started watching videos online and seeing people and said, I think there's a really interesting opportunity around creating media content and building websites. And I just wanted to learn. And so I actually, my sophomore year of college, started building this website called College Athlete Insight. And it was all just around what I was doing and how I got there and what other athletes should know, especially younger ones in high school or younger, and then their parents. And it had a little bit of a recruiting angle to it. And it started really popping off. Like I hit some sort of SEO benchmark and Google just started pushing it, and it was really cool. And then I wrote an ebook on there, and was selling a bunch, and it was doing pretty well in college. Really leveraged that into an acqui-hire situation at the first company I worked at, which was also a sports company out in Texas in Dallas, and it managed 20 engineers there. They were all from India, which started to expose me to the India sports market, which we'll get to. And I've been fascinated for many years now since that. And really, though, saw this gap in the opportunity because the founder of the company I was working at would always say, hey, go find me, what's the creator economy market in sports, or who are the other companies building data companies, data focused stuff in sports. And so I would go and just do all this research. And I just said, there's not a ton of people doing it in America. And there's also no one talking about what athletes are doing and the influence. And I just saw this opportunity. Hey, can we go create a little more media around that, but put a spin? Because I think you guys, like SportsTech X, Profluence, we try to go deep into things, right? Where a lot of the traditional sports outlets are just very broad, and you see the same things over and over and over, and Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift and okay, whatever. But like, what is this? What are the deeper insights? What's actually happening? And so just started building media around that, but realized pretty quick that there was an opportunity to do it for other people. So we started going even more niche. So we own publications across paddle and pickleball and cricket and basketball and football and a bunch of different other random ones, some more entertainment so than sports. But we created this portfolio of media companies. I mean, they're all their own company, but they're under a holding company of Profluence. So have millions of followers, hundreds of thousands of readers, and a bunch of listeners to different podcasts and stuff we do as well. And so that was really the journey up to now, which over the last 6 months changed, and we'll get into, and I'll just sort of stop there as the fund and other things sort of just came out of left field, and I guess as you call it, fell into our hands as just another opportunity we saw, just like I saw the previous two things that we began with while in college and then right out of college.
Millions of followers, hundreds of thousands of readers. You found yourself quite an audience there in the US, right? Is it primarily US based then?
For Profluence itself, because Profluence is its own media, but then the holding company, I would say, yeah, most of the publications are US based, but we've actually seen a ton of inflow from other countries, especially in ones obviously like cricket and paddle, a bunch of Europe for paddle, a bunch of India and just Asia in general and Australia for cricket. So those publications exposed from a media lens a lot to me about these other regions, and learned a ton and met a ton of the people that make decisions there or do cool things, or the athletes or whatever. So that was the media. And I guess, the next question is going to be going into sort of Profluence Capital anyway. So I'll just go there now. Go but just through the media, like I said, you put out a piece on data companies in sports or whatever, and I would say, here's some interesting companies or whatever, and you start to see, you start to know who they are. But then anyone who's not on that list or you didn't know about usually reaches out, or then people go, hey, can you connect us with fundraising or whatever? And I know we've talked about this offline as an interesting point. And just started getting a ton of deal flow through that and a bunch of different interesting things. And because we had the media reach, we were able to sell ads to a lot of these companies, but just started to see the opportunity of, hey, there could be something bigger here. But it wasn't me to be able to go and launch the fund. We needed other people and infrastructure that have the experience, have done it very successfully. And met a gentleman who still is, I hope, he at least was to launch the fund, but listened to a bunch of the podcasts and articles, and he's successfully created one of the largest private equity firms in cannabis, which is a really hard alternative asset class. And he came to me and just said, hey, with what you have and what you're doing, I think there's an opportunity to launch a fund off of this. And obviously there was a lot of due diligence and him digging in. And so we co-founded Profluence Capital together, and about 3 months ago really started to get active and brought fundraising in, and have now done invested in 4 companies. We're in the process of investment number 5, which is actually a team. And we'll dive into more of some of the specifics, but it's been fun. And there's actually a whole nother next part of the Profluence journey, but really focused right now on obviously keeping the media rolling and then executing on the fund. And it was already what I was sort of doing anyway. So now it's just like a little more structure behind it. We were already helping companies in a bunch of different ways, plugging them into media, introducing them to people. But now it's just like there's actual structure behind it.
And all this happened after you graduated in 2021? Did I get that right?
2021, but like in my head, I graduated in like 2020, just with everything that happened that year. The whole next year was basically a scrap because I had College Athlete Insight, that business really rolling. And so I was sort of like,
yeah. Man, I mean, that's the power of it. In 2-3 short years, you've managed to build yourself something, and now you're helping, you've co-founded a fund, which is super play to you on your ability to execute. Okay, so we've covered what Profluence Media does, which is, we talk about what's happening in the space. And it's not just about Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift, or not just about the price of the latest broadcasting rights and what ticket that's going to go for. It's going deeper than that. Like, what does that mean? Why is that ticket trending this way, or either high or low, whatever it is? That's what we want to get to, and that's what I really enjoy about your content as well. It's really get down to the insights, and then look at innovation, and then look at the startups and see how you can help them, either through capital or just through media coverage, whatever they need. All right, so I think we've set the context pretty well of what.
And can I just add one more point? There's 2 things that I think are important. I'm good at telling the vision, but I've needed a lot of help from a lot of really great people, some public, some private still. So this has been far from just me. There's a lot of amazing people, and you can see it on some of our sites and whatever, but even behind the scenes, in a bunch of different ways. So it's been a very much team effort, and I've been lucky to have a lot of awesome people that believe in me and us. And then number 2, I've been very collaborative across the space. Like, my whole thing is the pie is always big enough for everyone. And actually an NBA player told me this early on when I was starting. And he was like, don't really view anyone as competition. He's like, you don't want to give everyone away all your info and just tell them how you're doing everything. But there's a ton of room for everyone. And you actually all, if you're operating well and you're good people and doing good stuff, there's enough pie for everyone. And so for us, it's just always been, how can we collaborate with someone versus, we got to compete with them or they might take away this. But especially in sports, I mean, it's all based around teams anyway. So that's been the other key of learning that early, of looking at things and not going, there's something similar they're doing, we got to compete with them. But hey, they're doing this really good here, we're doing this really good here. How can we make something mutually beneficial happen? So really good people and a collaborative mindset has enabled a lot of this stuff to happen, and hopefully will continue to as we get a little bit bigger and decisions and things happen a little bit slower now.
Good man, and that's, I guess, why you've managed to accelerate at this pace. Because to your first point, you can't run that far alone. It takes a village to start a company, and appreciate that you appreciate everybody that's been on the journey with you. And 2, I think that's a great shout out, because even just how we got introduced, I'd seen your work. I don't think we really interacted. Maybe just like dropped a like or comment or something on some social post, but then you reached out after you saw something that I posted, and I was like, hey, let's jump on a call, and immediately invited you on the spot. We very much think the same way, that this is a market that is big but only growing, and there's enough and more for everybody to sit and do together, rather
Correct.
than fight for scraps that are falling off the table. Okay, so now let's talk about sports tech. Well, first let's talk about maybe at the capital. You already mentioned Profluence Capital. You already mentioned you've, in 3 short months, you've got 4 deals done. Getting a 5th, man, you guys are busy for sure. Maybe is there any of those that you want to talk about, like what either the deals that you've done, and then we'll look at what deals you usually look to?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just sort of go through what we're looking at, and then I can go through a few of them if that makes sense. But we're really at this, there's 2 complementary things we believe going on right now. There's emerging leagues and teams, and then sports, tech, and media as like a bundle. And so we love on two fronts of that, things that can go global and go across regions. That's a huge opportunity. And then also things that can expand beyond sports. So looking at a lot of opportunities, and this is more on the company side, not the league or team, obviously, but can this company get into music or entertainment, or is it a really talented founder and he's just testing market fit in sports? Or maybe they've built somewhere else and now they're coming into sports. So we're looking at a lot of things like that, and that helps. We have a lot of talented people with different backgrounds outside of sports. And one of the feedbacks as we were starting the fund was a lot of sports is very amateur, especially on the fund side or even the startup side. And so I really wanted to build a team that's done it in more traditional like software, or where you need to be more buttoned up, taking a Silicon Valley approach to how we're doing it. And so just from an emerging, I think I'll talk about three of our investments are great tentpoles for what we're trying to do. From a league or team standpoint, the Prep Super League, founded by Brian Woods, he built the USFL, advised on the XFL, built the Spring League, so built successful football leagues before. And now he's trying to come and build a league, take over time a lead in basketball, but doing the same thing in football now. And can you create these regional teams? And they actually, today, I know this won't get released today, but today they announced formally that they just sold their first team up into the seven figures.
Wow.
So yeah, and these are going to bring all the top 4 and 5 star high school.
And these are just high school teams.
Yeah, high school teams just saying, hey, college is now pro. This is going to go even younger. So we think things like that are super interesting. Like I said, the one we're finalizing right now is a team. I'll say it's a soccer team, and in the U.S. and tons of great growth ahead for soccer, just from demographics to the 2026 World Cup to a whole bunch of other stuff, and especially where the team's located. And then from the tech standpoint, we were able to be strategic add-ons. And we know where we can lead deals and where we can, and that's why we like to be collaborative. There's certain types of deals, and we haven't led any yet, but that we would, and we know the ones that we would maybe make sense for, but there's a lot that it wouldn't, where there's someone else that's more of an expert and makes more sense. And that's where we want to be able to collaborate with everyone and say, hey, here's what we bring to the table. These are the type of deals. Maybe we're better suited to be the lead. And for these ones, maybe you're better suited. And obviously that's over time. And we've been all over different series so far. So some earlier stage, some more mid stage, but we'll move earlier and earlier, I believe, over time. We'll see, right? Things can always be in flux, but that's the plan. And then the two tech investments, obviously one you're familiar with, we did Minutely right before their upcoming series, their next round. So we got in on that. And then Sports Vizio we did alongside Sapphire.
I've spoken to Jason as well earlier this year. So yeah, both of the odds we wouldn't participate in that round, but I think I met him or was introduced to him just after he had closed that round, possibly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was familiar with both the investments that you made, Sport Vizio and Minutely.
Yeah, and so from the standpoint of why the league one was really cool, and then also the Sports Vizio even was they actually came.
Maybe give a little context to anybody who doesn't know what Minutely and what Sports Vizio are.
Yeah, so Minutely live video previews. They work with some of the largest sports media properties in the world: NBA, CBS, Taboola. And so if you are on ESPN and you hover over a video, there's usually a live video preview. That's their technology. Yep. And Sports Vizio, they're creating AI sports stats and highlights. So automatically doing it through machine learning, which a lot of people that aren't deep in the space. It's usually a half manual, half automated process. They're trying to make it fully manual or fully automated. Yeah. And so super interesting on the cutting edge of technology. But what's been cool for us is Jason, for example, how I met him was, and I'm sure you're familiar with this type of stuff, Ron, but through a podcast a while ago, where we got in touch and we had a podcast and we stayed, and he actually didn't know we had a fund, but he was like, hey, listen, I'm looking for some extra strategic add-ons. I'd love, for you personally, Andrew, to write a small angel check, whatever you're comfortable with, just to I'd love to have you a part of it. And it was actually just perfect timing where we were like, actually, we have, we have a fund now. So similar type thing. So that one was really cool, just sort of proving out our thesis in a lot of different ways. But yeah, Jason, again, fits sort of the background. I think the technology can obviously go across all sports and it can be big, but there's potentially application outside of it. Obviously, it can go global. And he's a former exited founder from the technology space. So to see amazing people like him come in and say, let's make sports better is super exciting. And it's just fun. Like I'll have to, by the time this has been posted, like me and Jason are going to be in Miami together for one of our events we're hosting, and we have a bunch of NBA players and stuff going, and so he's going to get to talk to a bunch of them, and it's just cool. Like I just love the actual part of that stuff. To me, it's not about like, oh, you have a fund or you have media, it's like, yeah, but it's just all people, and we're trying to make an impact across sports and then hopefully the world, because sports, it's changed my life, probably a lot of other people's too. And so it's really cool, like when you get it in person, especially.
And that's,
that's a little bit more on some of our first ones.
Nice stuff. Not a bad city to host an event in either. I'm sure.
Especially now, it's all cold where we both are. So get a little sunshine for once, man. I'm looking. I don't know if this is on video, but I'm looking like translucent right now. You could like see through me. I'm so white.
Yeah, I think the only reason I look a bit yellow is because I've got yellow light in front of me. But you can see the way I'm dressed. I've got a nice full zip up. Yeah, it's snowing, man. I went for my run this morning, and it was like proper. It's early November, like late November. Berlin should not be snowing, but it is. There you go. All right. So we covered also again some of the stuff that you do with capital, what kind of deals you're looking for, which is across the life cycle. I actually quite like the distinction that you made, which is that we also invest in sports rights properties, rights holders, like at a certain point, new leagues and some innovation there. But while looking at tech from a different perspective, let's spend a bit of time there. I want to circle back to a point you made earlier about India or new markets or stuff that you've seen. What has been some of the stuff that has really excited you? I mean, from a technology perspective, sure, you'll always find new innovation, like automated highlights or AI doing some stuff, or I don't know, in fan engagement, there's a bunch of XR stuff, which people talk about all the time. So from that perspective, like what are some of the tech pieces that you've come across recently that you really like? And then from a market perspective, like outside of the US, what excites you?
Yeah, India is super fascinating on a bunch of different fronts. The obvious one that everyone, I mean, you should just know if you if you pay attention to anything or read at all, and just like hobbies outside of like sport. Like I feel like my whole life is sports in some way, whether business or doing fitness stuff or going to games or whatever. But I do like to read a lot too, and across many different sectors and genres and nonfiction, fiction. But India is like something I've been reading about a ton lately, especially the history of it, just to sort of learn about it. And obviously 1.4 billion people, that's the natural reason why it'd be interesting. Hey, a lot of consumers. And we've obviously talked offline about this, but maybe they're not all like consumer spenders just yet. There's still infrastructure.
Getting there. It's getting there.
It's definitely getting there. It's moving fast. And one of the most fascinating things to me is there's a lot of really great tech talent there as well. And if you even look at Web3, and obviously that's in a little rut, which I'm sure you'll see in your VC report coming out soon, but they actually created a lot of some of those companies because you have all these great engineers. And if you can put the resources and structure, some of the newest technologies going forward can come out of India. And that's what's super fascinating to me, because if you look at anything before, like you said, hey, here's DraftKings in the US. Okay, let's just replicate that, put a different name and call it Dream 11 or whatever, right, in India. So sort of just take other technologies or ideas and place it. Well, now I think it's changing where India might be actually creating some of these next things, companies, ideas, leagues. Even India itself, there was 2 professional leagues, sports leagues, 7 or 8 years ago, and now it's 15 plus. So even just the appeal for entertainment and sports is growing beyond just cricket and kabaddi and some of these traditional ones. And in terms of interesting things we've seen, I'm very interested in, just because there are so many people and as access and things go up, I think the fitness component is cool. And so, like, for example, can a pickleball league in India work because there's so many more people? So things like that to me are interesting. We haven't pulled the trigger on anything yet, and still getting our tentacles in there and people on the ground and building. But it's going to be a fun. I mean, I don't even know the time frame. I want to say decade, but like really even longer than that. But obviously, in terms of our cycles,
yeah, something to watch. So put it as simply as that, because I think anybody who's interested in growth and is really looking to scale, I think everybody's looking kind of eastward, and India is that the one that attracts the most amount of eyeballs. It's funny growing up, because India I was born there. I only moved to Europe 5 years ago. And it was strange how growing up, like our population, because India has always been like densely populated with a large number, was always the thing that held us back, it felt. It was like, oh, you're overpopulated. India's overpopulated. Nobody says overpopulated now at 1.4 billion. Now it's a big consumer market, and this is fueling our growth, which is such a paradigm shift, and I think driven by innovation of the Indian people as well, and your own work ethic and how we've managed to do, and how Indians have represented the country globally, because you see how many of Forbes 500 companies have Indian CEOs or Indians in really important management positions. And all of that is trickling back into the Indian economy now, because everything that's been learned second and third generation is going back and saying, hey, we've studied there, but you can actually if you want to make a salary, maybe you hang out in Europe and like a good life and stuff. But if you really want to make like wealth, generational wealth, that kind of thing, India is probably the place you want to be. So, okay, so that's one of the markets you want to look at. Anything particular in that market? Like I could talk about, you had a great example, which is the number of leagues that have popped up. Well, first of all, not even those get covered well enough. And then beyond that, there is a ton of sports which doesn't get visibility in India. So streaming, just a good sports streaming kind of long tail player, I think is super interesting. There are some that we know that we like.
I think a lot of the grassroots stuff, as you mentioned, because it's in the US even, it's still very fragmented, which that opens up a whole nother conversation of some things we're looking at there. But in India, there's not really clubs.
If you're going to say the US is fragmented, then I don't know what India is.
Just shattered.
Yeah. Just all over the place. But I think you're right, exactly right.
And so there's someone I will build an app that will be sort of recruiting based to help identify talent. Maybe it just starts in cricket, but it can expand to other sports, and maybe they go global if they can make it good enough. But someone will build something like that. I think that's an interesting idea. If someone wants to take on something that would be very hard to build, but has huge potential, as anything hard to build, right?
Like a home court.
So the grassroots.
Something like along those lines, which is like, hey, you can train and identify talent just through your phone.
Yeah, because there's just so many people. So think how many athletes slip through the cracks. And there's just not a central place of coaches and athletes. And it's just, like you said, it's very fragmented or shattered, or however we described it. I think that's an interesting point that, it's an opportunity for sure. And I don't even know what exactly that looks like, but I know someone's going to do it at some point, and it's going to be it'll be $1 billion company.
At some point. I think India started with gaming. I think we've seen some really, really well-funded, I'm talking about $50, $100 million funded companies already emerge, driven by capital coming in from the West. So that's and fitness was the other one. We touched on it a bit, but I think that market also has plenty of headroom. As we've seen anywhere in the West, like fitness is like different people want to be fit in different ways. So fitness is like this never ending, like whether it's hardware, you want the big device, like the Peloton, whatever, similar, a substitute in your living room, or you just want to go to the gym, you want classes at home, or I don't know, you want portable devices. Like fitness grows in a number of ways, and I think all of that will come to multiple parts of the world as well. So fitness is one, esports gaming, we talked about broadcasting, you talked about talent identification. There's so many different areas, and each of those could be just huge given the numbers.
Correct.
All right, so I love talking about India, and we could go on, but I want to cover maybe something else as well. So geography-wise, India, you're excited by. By the way, have you ever been? I don't know if you covered that.
I have not yet. I've had multiple opportunities, and so one of my best friends from college and teammate, he's grew up in India for some similar situation to you. Grew up, then went to high school in the U.S. He's 7 foot.
Okay.
But what's crazy is because he gave up his India passport to get a U.S. Now he can't play for the India national team where he would be like a really good player, which that's a whole nother, what the heck are they doing? If sports wants to go in India, they got to allow that. But anyway, I have not been. I got invited to the World Cup a couple months ago. Things just didn't quite line up. Obviously, with the fund, there's a lot of moving pieces. And so, but in the future, 100%, I will be there, and many other places I want to be also.
I'm sure you will. Invite to you. I'll be in India. I go for my annual skip the Berlin winter travel. So I always get away from the cold a bit. This year it'll be a bit short and a bit late because my brother's visiting. But I'll be there in Feb for 3 weeks. I've got a bunch of like meetings, like a bunch of stuff lined up that I'll be up to. So hey, if you're interested, you're welcome to join me. I'll take you on a tour.
Amazing.
First 3 weeks of Feb. All right. So again, like I said, I want to bring the India conversation home, and then move on to something else. So we've covered some of the sectors or the geographies that you're interested in. Quick shout out, maybe 1 or 2 names beyond India that you're looking at, or is it basically US, primarily a bit of Europe, and maybe a bit of India, or anything else on your radar?
It's a good question. One of the things we did is we got people on the ground on every continent and around the world. And this is from the fund perspective, but obviously Profluence, like they all sort of somewhat tie into each other. And we want to, and that's why I said we want to be collaborative too, is we want to diversify the portfolio across the globe. But in the US, obviously it would be still the majority of it, but we want to be able to get into other, if there's a hot deal or something in other regions, we want to be able to be in those. And that's how we'll give our, obviously, LPs some global exposure as well. So we're looking everywhere. I mean, I've looked at a ton of deals out of Africa lately. It's we're still early as a fund too, so there's still some learning. So there's some that maybe in the future we maybe would pull a trigger on, but right now it's just still learning, a little gray. But yeah, I mean, we're looking at companies from every region in the globe. I would say just majority, at least at the start, are going to come from US, obviously, number 1, Europe, and I'm going to say like Israel. I'm going to group them sort of as 2, India, Australia, 3, Middle East, 4, Africa, 5, South America,
we go from
6-ish.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Africa. I had a morning call with a South African Web3 fan experience play, which was fun. And my next one, just after we drop off, is with I think the Nigerian, I'm not sure, Nigerian but Central African company. Like I usually don't, but it just so happens I've got 2 calls today. And it just seems like, again, like when momentum is building, you want to just go have those initial conversations and get a feel for things. Such an interesting time to be in sports tech. No,
it is. Fun. Well, it's interesting because like we said earlier, DraftKings, and I'm just using them, but there's other players in the US, FanDuel, et cetera. They built that. They did, they built a solid company. Dream 11, obviously, in India. Well, can you go build the same thing in Africa?
Right.
So that's what's interesting about sort of the space. But there's a lot of dynamics, and it just takes a lot of research and people on the ground to really understand how things work. Like even India, if you saw a deal, you got to understand low trust society. You got to understand how people are, how it moves, how business gets done, the speed. There's a lot of things that go into it. And so, but that's what's fun to me. I just, a lot of what I read, even outside of Profluence or anything, is just history. I just find humans and what we've done and accomplished and how we've evolved fascinating. And we've done a lot right. We've done a lot wrong as humans for sure. But it's just really cool. I don't know. I think I learned a lot of this from BU, Boston U, when I was there, because I'd be sitting in a class. I still remember it was really cool, a geography class. And we were learning about all the regions, and my professor had been to literally every single country in the world. And so he would be talking all about it and whatever. But even if you looked at all the students in the class, the girl next to me from Iran, the kid in front of me from India, me from here, then to my right, a kid from an urban city in the US, and then someone from Kazakhstan, and then Europe and South. It was the whole world was the class, learning about the whole world. And so for me, it was always like, wow, we're all sort of the same, come from different things, but it was really cool. And so I think that sort of ignited it. Sports does the same thing. And that's why I love sports so much, is it brings everyone together. And now it's cool because there's a lot more opportunities within it from a business sense and as an asset class.
Love it, man. Love that passion. Love it when people talk like that about sports. Give me a quick shout out. The last book you read or something that you want to recommend to anybody listening?
I just read this book. It's more about consciousness. It's called The Eye of the I. Very fascinating. If you've never done any spirituality reading, I would say it's probably not the best first one, because I have a base. So there's some stuff that you would be like, this makes no sense to me. But it's all around how there's a scale of consciousness, and it goes from 0 to 1,000. This is all according to the author. That's been his life studies. And at 0 is just like fear, greed, all this. And then if you go to 1,000, it's all the most enlightened people in his eyes, Jesus, Buddha, all these people. Right. And humans, right, or in 1985, we're at 190 consciousness. So we were still more in this like not great space, but we've over the last 20 years gotten up to 207. And it's really interesing.
I love the numbers and the specificity of it. Like this is okay.
And there's like obviously there's I didn't go then read all the studies and how they did it all that, but it's just super fascinating of why things are happening the way they are. And anyway, I think taking things outside of sports gives you good insights into as well. Like some of my greatest insights or thoughts have been reading a marketing book or reading an old fiction book and then going, wait, like there's something ties to, that's interesting. So The Eye of the I, very, very fascinating book.
Very cool. We'll check it out. It's funny you mentioned spirituality. The last one I read, I've got like 10 pages left or something, is kind of on point on that topic, but from a completely different direction. It's about quantum mechanics and quantum physics, which is essentially about energy and how particles move. I'm not a science major, nothing. I dropped science way back when. But just the idea, because I've spent a bit of time with spirituality and I wanted to see what science had to say about it. And it's been a fascinating journey. All right, man, we've covered quite a lot, I think. We've kind of motored through. Let's bring us home. Okay, so what's next? What's the next 12, 18 months looking like for Profluence and for Profluence Capital?
Yeah, so continuing to make advancements on the media front. I actually signed an interesting deal with a India-based media company, try to get a little more coverage. Like you said, no one's doing it well into that region. So a bunch of different media stuff growing that front. Then the fund is the major focus of continuing to bring on partners and employees and people to be a part of the vision, and obviously looking at a ton of deals and hopefully doing a bunch more. And outside of that, like I said, it always seems like, at least so far, there's been something leads to the next. So as much as right now I'm sort of in that position of like, okay, we got the next thing sort of rolling. It's not completely done, but we've got it rolling. Now I'm like, I know something else is going to come up and I'm going to be like, that's what's next for this ecosystem or what we have to do. But I'll say just some events. We want to host some events. We think it's cool just to bring people together in real life. And whether you're an investor, an athlete, a founder, an executive, have the chance to meet some people that could be relevant, we think is cool and unique. And someone said, someone that runs a media company said, what really brings a media company to life is when they can see it in person, in real life. And I was like, that's interesting. So we want to do a few events, and we can tie. What's cool is because we have the teams and league infrastructure now, we'll be able to, host some events around that stuff
Sporting
also.
events, right?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Updates on that. Obviously love anyone that's around or wherever we're doing them to come and participate and meet a lot of great people, hopefully, and have fun and, get the sports obviously will be built into it. And, so that's, like I said, I don't know. Who knows where the next 12 to 18 months is going, but just trying to take it a day at a time. And I don't know about you, but I have fun each day. So I guess that's what it's all about. It wasn't basketball. I loved every day. And so I'm trying to carry that over now to hopefully the rest of my career life, doing what you like. So
I love how you brought it home it almost sounds like a sportsman's answer. Like, no, it's just the next game and it's just the next day. And you kind of ended it on that one. I enjoyed that. And yeah, speaking of events, I mean, I didn't want to mention too much, but yeah, that's actually what we're going to do in India as well in Feb. So if you want to come in and find out more and connect with that ecosystem, it'd be great. But no public announcements yet. We'll get to details.
Amazing. Yeah, no, I'd love to tie you to some of our people that are there, full time anyway, doing some cool stuff. So
that'd be great.
Yeah, that's what's next. The world is getting smaller and smaller, thanks to technology.
It is. Andrew, all right. So if anybody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best place to find you? LinkedIn, your email, your website?
Yeah, I would say LinkedIn, Andrew Petcash on LinkedIn, and then Profluence.com has all of our stuff linked together, from the Profluence Capital to About Us and some of our stuff, and you can get all our info and resources there, and or reach out to our team about whatever it is, fundraising, or you want some advertising and media, or whatever it is.
And Andrew, by the way, is a top voice on LinkedIn. If you know what that is, LinkedIn has this category and stuff. So I saw that on your profile. So yeah, if you follow him, you'll be getting some good info. Andrew, I always end with my favorite question. I like to believe we're sports fans first. So what has been your favorite sporting moment? And for you, I would like to hear two. One, for your career as an athlete, so one you participated in yourself, and another just purely as a fan.
100% the one playing as an athlete was winning the Patriot League championship to get to go to the tournament. I mean,
wow.
You work so hard as a college athlete every day, from waking up at 6 to lift, to class all day, then practice, then rehab, then study hall, and everyone's doing it. And then you're the team that comes out on top. And that feeling, like, I'll never forget it. It was amazing. And I've just had a lot of everything.
What position did you play?
Say that again.
What position did you play on the court?
I played shooting guard. I was the kid that, at least in college, I was in the corner knocking down threes and stuff. But this leads to my second answer, is just everything sort of in my life that I've had a vision and worked towards. It's always seemed to work out and kind of play into fruition. So making it to March Madness was always one of them. And then obviously playing D1 basketball was the pre-one. And so it's been cool to see that stuff come to life and actually materialize. And and like, I never had creative fund. Like I said, it just sort of came out as the next opportunity. If you would have asked 3 years ago, I would be like, what? Venture capital? I have no idea what that even, you know what I'm saying? So, but I had sort of written down in a clunky way was to own a professional team or league. And so it's not direct. I'm not owning the Dallas Mavericks or the Boston Celtics, but like, we're moving towards that. And so it's just sort of always led me now to even be more specific. What do you really want? Where do you want to go? Because things will come up in the middle that are cool, like a fund, but like through that, now I got to these leagues and teams, which is it's just pretty wild that you can take visions and write something down and it comes to fruition. I've seen it in sports and now seeing it like on the business side. So I think that ties sort of to the spirituality books and some of that stuff. The universe is wild and it's all connected and it's cool.
Love it, man. Andrew, appreciate your energy, appreciate your time that you've taken to share it. And it's just been great to kind of to kind of see, I wouldn't say see your journey or anything, because we've only come on each other's radar, I say, in the last year, but it's been cool to see what you've been up to. And I think long may it continue. I think we'll hopefully get to work more closely on a couple of things. And I feel fairly confident that we will, shall we say.
Yeah, no, likewise, Ryan. It's been awesome. And like I said, I've always enjoyed breaking down your reports and content as well. And it's cool to now actually be talking on it when I've listened to other people that have launched funds and heard their journeys. And so now to know I'm going to have to, I actually don't mind listening to my voice now. If I was on the radio for a little side story, but yeah, so it'd be cool to hear, re-listen to this and be like, oh, okay, maybe I need to clear up how we're doing this or whatever. But listening to other people on yours has been cool. So keep up the good work from your side and look forward to collaborating for sure.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you so much. All right, guys, that is a wrap for another episode. Andrew, make sure you check him out on LinkedIn. Check out the Profluence website, profluence.com, and all the good work that they do. From our side, if you aren't already on the newsletter, drop in there to know when the report will go out. It should be out, I think, the day after or the day before this podcast comes out. Just follow our website, get on our newsletter if you're not already. If you are, then we'll see you next week. Ciao.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Tech All-Stars podcast with Rohan Malhotra.